I think they probably will try to do it. I think that's very difficult. Healthcare is a bad issue for Republicans historically. Now, could things change? Of course they could change. Anything could change.
Good morning, I'm Anna Palmer.
And I'm Jake Sherman.
And welcome to the Daily Punch, brought to you by Punchbowl News. It's Friday, October 24th, 2025, TGIF. Let's get into the mix. Here are your Washington headlines of the day. Number one, what James Blair of the White House told us on Flyout Day. Number two, day 24 of the government shutdown, where things stand with Congress back home. And number three, Lindsey Graham's push for Russia Week. All right, Jake, let's get into it. So we shot Flyout Day yesterday morning, spoke with the White House Deputy Chief of Staff and one of the top advisors to President Donald Trump, James Blair. I think what was so interesting to me, and I want to talk, we kind of go into this and some of the two top takeaways here, but is just how he has a grasp of and his hand in everything from policy to politics. Well, the interview really spanned the gamut from shutdown to what else Donald Trump wants to get done to getting deep into the weeds on redistricting. I really encourage everyone. We're going to talk about some of our top takeaways from the conversation, but you should really check it out on YouTube. Just search Punchbowl News. You can subscribe there.
Link is also in the newsletter.
Yes, it is. We make it easy, folks. We try to, any way possible.
You can get it there. And I think it's also a podcast is what my understanding is.
Technology, Jake. That's what we call them.
You can get it here in where you are right now.
That is true.
Yeah. Two Jameses in the White House, Blair and Braid. And Braid works for Blair, and Blair runs political, public, and legislative affairs. Listen, he is a former campaign aide to Trump and to others, to a bunch of others, including Ron DeSantis. So you're right. He really has his hands in a lot of different things. I'm going to talk about the two things he dug in on. Number one, healthcare. And I want to spend a second on this. I don't know if you I hope you shared my impression because it's in the newsletter this morning, but they don't seem very interested in just extending these Obamacare tax credits. The dissonance, Anna, between the story we ran yesterday, the top yesterday, basically being like, well, it's time for Trump to fold from Democrats, and James Blair being like, we're not going to fold on this.
Right.
These are subsidies to insurance companies. No. I mean, those are two very different points of view that don't seem at the moment reconcilable. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, things change, but those don't seem reconcilable. Okay, they say they want to, and we've heard this in the Capitol, they want to do healthcare, a healthcare overhaul. Color me extraordinarily skeptical that will be successful. I've said on this podcast, and I think I've said elsewhere, that I believe this shutdown ends up with the president pushing Republicans to try to do a healthcare reform effort over the next 6 months. I think they probably will try to do it. I think that's very difficult. Healthcare is a bad issue for Republicans historically. Now, could things change? Of course they could change. Anything could change. We live in the moment, and the moments are fleeting, and things change. That's kind of life. Deep thoughts with Jake Sherman in the morning.
I mean, wow, we're going Friday here. But I do want to pick up on one thread you said, right? Like, to me, what was interesting is, yeah, fine, put aside the ACA subsidy. I don't think anybody thought that they were going to say, like, yeah, we're ready to cut a deal with the Democrats. But the idea that Republicans are looking at a larger health care package, right? Is that reconciliation? Is it I brought up on the show yesterday, I actually think there is some real bipartisan healthcare efforts. It wouldn't be massive, but there was a package at the end of last year that ended up failing that has a lot of things that people want to get done, extenders and otherwise, that you could see roll up. And maybe there is some kind of an extension of subsidies as part of that, but not being the main part. I thought the other thing fascinating was Blair saying that where oftentimes when Congress doesn't act, that the president tries to get deals done, and he has been getting deals done with pharmaceutical companies, and he said there's more on the way, Jake.
Yeah, he did. And I thought that was interesting. He said some of these are publicly traded companies, so he couldn't talk about them. I don't think he would talk about them even if they weren't.
Get out in front of the president on that.
I don't think that's something that the president would like. I thought that was very interesting. So talk quickly about politics, Anna, because Blair is perhaps most importantly, I don't know if he'd view it as most importantly, but most importantly to dozens and dozens of people in D.C., he is kind of the tip of the spear for the president's political efforts in Washington. He talked about the importance for Trump of Republicans keeping the House and the Senate. He said that John Cornyn appears to have done a good job of pulling his poll numbers up from where they were a few months ago, which is something that John Cornyn's going to like hearing, because I think Blair has huge sway in whether Donald Trump endorses people, and Cornyn's in a three-way race against Wesley Hunt and Ken Paxton. He said that Hunt jumping into the primary was a wild card. And he said that Trump is already spending money in races around the country. I haven't seen that.
Right.
So that
was news.
Yeah, that
to a
was
lot
news
of people.
to me. I was one of those people. And it was interesting. We asked him about the Indiana Senate Republican leadership saying that they can't pass redistricting. He said, I think we'll see how Indiana continues to evolve, but I don't think that's a correct assessment. Being like, you better pass this or else,
I mean,
or else, effectively.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. I really encourage you to take a look at the show or listen in on this podcast feed. All right, Jake, let's move on to the number 2 story of the morning. The Senate is gone until Monday, meaning the government shutdown is all but guaranteed to go into its 4th week. The impact of the spending impasse is growing more severe every single day. This is just kind of stunning, right? Where you have Democrats and Republicans continuing to be in their corners, and we don't have a gang, we don't have negotiations, we don't have much happening, as both sides are just kind of sticking to their talking points, doing some other messaging bills and funding bills for pay, but that's it.
Yeah, this is interesting. One thing that was interesting, and we could talk about this quickly, Ron Johnson's bill to pay federal employees did not pass, but John Ossoff, Raphael Warnock, and John Fetterman backed the bill.
Right.
Catherine Cortez Masto did not. Neither did Angus King. That would have been a big vote for Republicans if they had. But this does show that there is some pressure. I mean, Ossoff is he's one of the most vulnerable, I think the most vulnerable Senate Democrat. Raphael Warnock is his delegation mate, the other senator from Georgia. And it just shows the political potency of not having federal workers paid. And I don't know how that translates going forward, but it is something that, I'm not surprised. That this is starting to get a little bit hot. And Republicans counter that if you want to open the government, we have a bill for you. But that doesn't seem to be in the offing. It's, it's day 24 in, Anna, and I think you said this, of the shutdown. And the Senate's gone. The House is not coming back anytime soon. And we'll have to see if there's an effort to. Some people have talked about efforts to pay air traffic controllers. Some people have talked about efforts to reopen SNAP, the food stamp program, which we wrote about yesterday. If any of those pass, the House will have to come back into session, and they'll have to end their now more than 1 month recess during the shutdown.
I do think, interestingly, something to watch here is, Senator Johnson's bill to pay federal employees did fail. You noted that there's some Democrats who came across the board. There was a Democratic counterproposal from Senator Chris Van Hollen, also rejected. But the interesting thing here is Johnson and Van Hollen are discussing potentially merging their bills. So clearly there is an effort and desire by Republicans and Democrats here to try to get something done on federal pay. Let's move on to the number 3 story of the morning. Super interesting item here. Senator Lindsey Graham is pushing for quote unquote Russia Week on the Senate floor, where senators would take up a trio of bills targeting Moscow, including a long-stalled sanctions effort. This is just really interesting to me because you just had a week or so ago, Senator John Thune, the majority leader, say, move off from the idea that the Senate was going to take up these sanctions pressure. It's so rare where Republicans in the Senate and the White House are in publicly different places here, but this is certainly a pressure valve that Senate Republicans want to be able to pressure effort when it comes to Russia.
The challenge for Senate Republicans, and Andrew writes about this, Andrew and Brianna, is that it's impossible, it's very difficult for Republicans to have a policy on Russia, or at least a legislative policy on Russia, because the president's all over the map. I mean, one day he says he's going to sanction Russia and Putin is continuing this war for no reason. The next day he's on Russia's side on Ukraine, effectively, according to reporting, saying that it's a special operation, not a war. One day he says he wants sanctions. The next day he's going to meet with them. And John Thune has been a patient soldier, so to speak, and saying that he is trying to do Russia policy in concert with the White House to make sure we're giving them the best possible opportunity to succeed in getting Russia to the table. But Thune also says, I've been interested for some time in getting the Russia sanctions bill to the floor. So it's like it's a difficult situation that they find themselves in. And this Russia week thing is, we'll have to see where Trump comes down because he could nix this thing in a second.
Of course, Lindsey Graham, though, clearly a close ally of the president. So interesting to see him be the face of this latest effort to try to get something done on Russia.
Yep.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Daily Punch. If you do, share it on social media. Tell your friends. It's the best way for folks to find out about us. And, of course, you can go deeper on all things Punchbowl News at punchbowl.news. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.